Ishnu Pora, everyone. How are you? My name is Necroxis, and welcome back to another video where we examine the complete lore of a character. As per usual, I give my take on the character after its history, and today we're taking a look at the High Chieftain of the Tauren, Baine Bloodhoof. After my video last week where I ranted and raved about Terran Zoo for a large portion of the opinion section, this week I probably won't have too much to say, and generally I'm just going to explain why I think Blizzard needs to capitalize on the character of Baine Bloodhoof more. So, let's get started. Baine was completely unknown until his role in the Orcs bonus campaign in the Frozen Throne expansion of Warcraft 3, which explained the creation of Orgrimmar after the Third War. In addition, he was largely absent from the game up until Cataclysm, so more of his personal information about his past is sketchy at best. His age is unknown, but Baine Bloodhoof was born to his father and chieftain of the Tauren, Cairn, and his mother, Tamala. Out of lack of clarification, we can assume that, as the rest of the Tauren and his father did, Baine followed his people in joining Thrall's horde. Following the Legion's defeat ending the Third War, the Tauren had returned to Mulgore and settled their capital of Thunderbluff. But before they could truly settle in, however, the Tauren were contacted by an envoy to Thrall, a beastmaster by the name of Rexxar. Rexxar had arrived in Mulgore and informed Cairn that Admiral Daelin Proudmoore of Kul Tiras had declared war upon the still-in-construction Orgrimmar, opting to destroy all of the orcs that had lived there. Thrall wished for the aid of Cairn and the Tauren, however the chieftain had fallen into a deep depression. Baine, his one and only child, had been captured by the Centaur and taken to their village. Cairn refused to listen to Rexxar's request or send Tauren to aid Thrall, vowing that what would happen to the horde did not matter if his son was dead. Rexxar, who both wanted to help Cairn and also realized the need of the Tauren warriors, set out to rescue Baine. Reaching the Centaur camp, Baine's party successfully infiltrated and rescued the young Tauren and made their way back to Cairn's camp. Seeing his son safe renewed the fire in Cairn's spirit, and the chieftain traveled with Rexxar back to Orgrimmar to begin preparing the assault on Admiral Proudmoore's forces. And while Baine himself seemingly did not participate in the attack on Theramore to stop the Admiral, he did begin playing an increasingly prominent role in Tauren society between the time of Frozen Throne and World of Warcraft. With his father aging, Baine took a greater role in the leadership of the Tauren with each passing year. During the first three expansions, Baine led the town of Bloodhoof Village, investigating the Venture Company operations and stopping the Pale Mane Gnolls in Mulgore. Baine also attempted to warn the dwarven miners at the Bale Dun dig site against their violent mining. He claimed that such actions could hurt the spirits of Earth. He went so far as to send Tauren troops to break their tools in an effort to stem their tide, but the dwarves refused. In the end, though, Baine would be proven right, as after the Cataclysm struck, Earth Elementals rose from the dig site and slaughtered all of the dwarves. As the Tauren's role in the Horde increased, Cairn found himself increasingly needed outside of Thunderbluff, and as such, Baine would lead his people in his father's place. Baine would grow to become a major leader of the Tauren, much to his father's approval. As the Emerald Nightmare began to slowly corrupt Azeroth, Baine guides the people of Thunderbluff in his father's stead, and later he joins Malfurion Stormrage when he calls for the warriors of Azeroth to battle the Nightmare inside the Emerald Dream. Inside this dream, Baine demonstrates his leadership capabilities once again, and after Malfurion gives leadership of the battle to Varian Wrynn, Baine eases the Horde agitation at this act by being the first member of their faction to stand beside the Human King. Following the Nightmare's defeat came the Shattering, during which Baine defended Thunderbluff from wind and water elementals. However, his true leadership was about to be tested as Thrall appointed Garrosh Hellscream to the position of War Chief, entrusting Cairn, his father, to advise the new leader. Cairn, through subterfuge on the part of Magatha Grimtotem poisoning Garrosh's axe, is killed in a Mak Gora, an orcish duel of honor for leadership. Where the original Mak Gora was non-lethal, Garrosh attempted to dissuade Cairn by demanding it work as it did in the old days, to the death. Unfortunately, Garrosh's attempt to persuade Cairn not to fight failed, and even though he had the upper hand initially, Magatha's poison sealed Cairn's fate. And while Orgrimmar wheeled from the death of arguably the second most notable member of the Horde's leadership, Magatha Grimtotem enacted the next phase of her plan. Having prepared her forces for the death of the chieftain, Magatha's tribe struck. On her orders, the Grimtotem clan began taking over Mulgore, killing any who resisted. Several assassins were also sent to Bloodhoof Village to kill Baine, who was still ignorant of what had happened in Orgrimmar. It is only due to a Grim Totem defector, a shaman named Stormsong, that he would survive. Stormsong was fiercely loyal to his mistress Magatha, but he had also deeply respected Cairn. He felt that Magatha's poisoning of Garash's axe, unbeknownst to him, betrayed what it meant to be a shaman, and thus he informed the new High Chieftain Baine that all that had occurred, and engineered their escape to Camp Taraho in the Barrens. Meeting Archdruid Hamul Runetotem in the camp, Baine and Stormsong arrive, and Baine begins planning to avenge his father and retake Thunderbluff, which was now under Grim Totem control. The Archdruid, longtime friend to Cairn but also a realist, told Baine that their allies were few. They were unsure of Garash's role, if he had one, in Cairn's death, and they also were unsure of his allegiance to Magatha. The Forsaken and Undercity were kept under Corcoran guard due to the events of the Wrathgate previously. The Blood Elves were too far away, and the Darkspear Trolls were too few in number. With no other option, Baine decided to approach somebody who technically was an enemy, but was also known for her honor, Jaina Proudmoore. Arriving in Theramore, unbeknownst to all but the city, Baine meets Prince Anduin Wrynn. After initial uneasiness, the two warm to one another, both philosophically outcasts in their own faction, seeking peace more than war. Baine's sadness, the belief in the futility of his cause, and the death of his father stirred great empathy in Anduin, and in an act of friendship the prince gave Baine an ancient mace called the Fearbreaker. The weapon reacts to Baine and steadies his mind with the power of the light, and Baine promises to treasure it always. Jaina, who was watching this event, is moved at the two future leaders of the opposing factions coming together, and agrees to provide Baine with the monetary support to bring down Magatha and rescue Thunderbluff. With his thanks, Baine returns to Camp Taraho and instructs Stormsong to travel in secret to Ratchet. There, he met with the chief engineer of Orgrimmar and friend to Cairn and Thrall, at least as much of a friend as a goblin can be without involving money, Gazlowe. Gazlowe had also recently rebuilt Orgrimmar, following a large portion of its burning during the Cataclysm by fire elementals. Stormsong requisitions zeppelins, mercenaries, and a large amount of explosives to attack Thunderbluff. Gazlowe, in an actual rare moment for a goblin, reduced the price in respect of Cairn's death, and soon Baine had the capabilities to free his home. Using Stormsong's shamanism to create a fake thunderstorm, Baine and his forces attack Thunderbluff and eventually defeat the Grim Totems. Following her defeat, Baine smashes Magatha's totems, an act which both immediately cut off her power from the elements, and also was going to force her to try and atone to the elements in the long term for them being destroyed. Following the victory, Baine gave the Grim Totem survivors an ultimatum: renounce Magatha and join him without question under Stormsong's leadership, or join their mistress in exile. And if they ever threatened the Torrent again, he would not hesitate to kill them all. With about 1/4 of the Grim Totems joining Baine, the rest and their mistress were banished to the Stonetalon Mountains. Following Magatha's banishment, Baine met with Garash, accusing him of willfully participating in Magatha's plan, to Garash's repeated insistence of ignorance. Garash expected Baine would challenge him like his father had, but Baine refuses. He tells Garash that he believed Baine's challenge was to unite the Horde, and if he had challenged the War Chief, it would only seek to divide them further. He begrudgingly considers the matter settled, despite still being angry with Garash's role in his father's death, as Garash was the one who upped the ante by insisting the Mak'gora was to the death instead of in Thrall's version. Baine acknowledges him as War Chief, surprising Garash and sparking admiration in him towards Baine. Garash then pledges the loyalty of the entire Horde to Baine as a result. With his city now retaken, Baine attends the funeral of his father, and speaks with Thrall before he leaves to try and stable the Maelstrom. Baine was now the full-time High Chieftain of the Torrent without question, and he would quickly begin understanding the difficulties of leading. As time went on, Baine's rocky relationship with Garash grew icier, despite the High Chieftain having convinced himself that Garash was the strong guiding figure that the Horde needed in the wake of the Cataclysm. After this, Baine meets with Garash and Hamul Runetotem, and he becomes increasingly frustrated to hear Garash demanding more and more from the Torrent, such as access to Mulgore's pristine and pure water sources. Garash reported that the goblins had tainted much of Azara's water supply with their projects. At this same time, Baine also was dealing with the Quillboars acting fiercer than they ever had in their history, and the Torrent were beginning to crack under the weight of all of these pressures. Eventually, a large fraction of Torrent and Thunderbluff began to agree that they should leave the Horde, growing frustrated with Baine compromising to all of Garash's demands. While trying to prevent the Tauren from collapsing within, Hamul concluded that the source of the Quilboar aggression was due to their lack of water, something all of the Horde in Kalimdor were suffering from. The Archdruid mentions the shortage of water could have something to do with the Tauren's goddess, the Earth Mother's actions, but Garrosh crudely insults their entire religion. He insists that he himself will do something, quote, realistic about the problem, and he sends for a Kor'kron regiment. Baine arms the newly formed Tauren Paladin Sunwalkers to assist Garrosh, and eventually begins to doubt his leadership as the frustrated Tauren make plans to leave Thunderbluff and forsake Baine. With Hamul, Garrosh, and the Kor'kron, the High Chieftain and their forces attack the Quilboar's tunnels. Garrosh is cut off from his forces and he is disarmed. Preparing for his death, he is then rescued by the Tauren forces. Baine, wielding the Fearbreaker, helps Garrosh reclaim Gorehowl, while Hamul demonstrates the power of the Earth Mother to Garrosh by calling a river to provide the Quilboar with a sufficient water source, if they agree to stop attacking the Tauren. The Quilboar agree and anxiously return to their tunnels. As the Orcs return to Orgrimmar, Baine returns to Thunderbluff and is met by the Tauren who are considering leaving. They witnessed Baine's leadership during the Quilboar attacks and apologize for doubting his ability. They request a pardon for their action, and Baine grants it, telling them to remain steadfast for the Tauren people. During the Cataclysm storyline, Baine, with the help of a Tauren adventurer, kill Orno Grimtotem, a Magatha loyalist who had invaded Mulgore with a troop of Grimtotem Tauren. Baine is also told of the destruction of Camp Taraho at the hands of the Alliance, and as such he orders the construction of the massive gate between the Barrens and Mulgore in order to protect Thunderbluff and their homeland. Some of Baine's advisors also tell him to take his forces and attack the Alliance in response for Camp Taraho's destruction. But Baine not only disagrees, but also expels them from Thunderbluff, not wishing to further the cycle of war. Baine is next seen in the book Tides of War, called to Orgrimmar by Garrosh for a war council. Arriving in Orgrimmar, he instantly dislikes the feeling of the city's reconstruction, with its dark, high, and violent-looking walls. After exchanging niceties with Lor'themar, Gallywix, and Eitrigg, Garrosh arrives and explains to the Horde leaders that he wishes to scour Theramore from Kalimdor. Following this, Garrosh would then march all of his armies onto the Night Elven lands. Sylvanas immediately objects, stating that Garrosh attacking the Night Elves would leave Lordaeron open to invasion, and she attempts to play on Lor'themar's fears so that he would agree with her. When he doesn't, Baine actually finds himself feeling sympathetic toward her, knowing what it felt like to look for support from somebody who should be reasonable, but wasn't finding any. Following this, Eitrigg offers his opinion only to be shot down by Garrosh. He says that he had already heard Eitrigg's opinion, however Baine notes that they had not. While Eitrigg tries to explain his disagreement with this action, Gallywix cuts him off. He notes that he wanted to hear the costs of such an invasion, not only the profit. This angers Baine, who says that Jaina Proudmoore does not deserve such treatment, proclaiming that she had helped him when others would not. Garrosh tells him to be silent or he'll end up as his father, to which Baine responds with if he meant being betrayed. Angering Garrosh, he steps toward Baine, with Hamul Runetotem stepping forward with Eitrigg to protect the High Chieftain. Malkarok, on the other hand, a Blackrock Orc and Garrosh's new bodyguard, did the same for the Warchief. After the tensions die down a bit, Garrosh asks Baine if his loyalties were with the Alliance who had attacked Camp Taraho, or with him and the Horde. Baine calmly responds by saying that if he did wish to leave the Horde, he would have done so before now, referencing Cairn's death and Garrosh's decision not to help him fight Magatha and retake Thunderbluff. Despite most of the other leaders agreeing that attacking Theramore would be a bad decision for a multitude of reasons, Garrosh declares that the Horde will attack Northwatch Hold and then march onto the city. After the meeting, Baine and Vol'jin speak, and the High Chieftain learns that Garrosh had allowed the Blackrock Orcs into the Horde, much to Baine's dismay. When Vol'jin points out that Baine did something similar with the Grim Totems, Baine notes that he thinks better of the Tauren than he does these current Orcs, to which Vol'jin actually admits that in these times he did as well. When the invasion begins, Baine and Vol'jin combine their forces and co-lead an attack on Northwatch Hold, and easily begin to push into the base. During the battle, Garrosh orders his Dark Shaman to summon and enslave Molten Giants to aid in the attack. Turning to a Shaman advisor, Baine inquires as to what these creatures are, and the Shaman tells Baine that they were enslaved elementals, an act whose summoning was forbidden by the Earthen Ring. After watching the Molten Giants kill any in their way, Baine calls for his forces to retreat, refusing to let them be injured by Garrosh's monsters. After the battle, Baine orders his forces to attend to the fallen and demands that his people do not desecrate the bodies of any fallen alliance. He then proceeds to confront Garrosh about what he had done, which angers Melkorok. Melkorok challenges Baine to a Mak'gora, to which Baine ignores, and states that he has no wish to see more Horde lives lost. Baine tells Garrosh he is worried about what may come of their actions from this day, and the war chief says that his concern was noted but not necessary. As Garrosh leaves, he says that when his plans are finished, he'll be glad to accept Baine's apology, but until they were finished, he'd hear no more of Baine's concerns. Baine eventually returns to his tent and reflects upon Garrosh's actions, especially the disregard for his allies' counsel and the twisting of the elements. Coming to a conclusion on the only course of action he felt was honorable, Baine orders Perith Stormhoof, a scout, to take a message to Jaina Prodmore and warn her of Garrosh's upcoming attack. Baine gives the scout the Fearbreaker mace, to return it to Anduin through Jaina, remarking that he felt he didn't deserve to wield it anymore after his part in Northwatch Hold's destruction. Following the victory, Baine, Vol'jin, and the Blood Elf and Forsaken commanders who had arrived in Sylvanas and Lorthamar's stead grew increasingly frustrated at Garrosh refusing to let them in on his plan. They held a secret meeting discussing what the war chief could be planning in addition to addressing all of their other concerns they had for his actions. Unfortunately, the war chief had been tipped off to the meeting and arrived in anger and disbelief that those under him would dare question his actions. And as the discussion naturally heats up, Baine notes that nobody there had chanted death to Garrosh, and all they did was question his leadership. Melkorok immediately retorts that questioning the war chief was questioning the Horde, to Baine's disbelief. He tells Melkorok that that only works if 2 + 2 = 5, and that this meeting only happened because Garrosh refused to meet with anybody but the Blackrock Orc himself. Garrosh counters this by saying he does not need to answer to anybody, and after Hamul Runetotem tries to compare Thrall's leadership to Garrosh's, Garrosh notes that he is not Thrall and that they will do what he commands until he changes his orders. Following this, Baine and Vol'jin are called to a meeting with Garrosh, with Melkorok also present. Baine questions why the war chief only seemed to listen to his bodyguard, which angered Melkorok. Garrosh tells him to stand down, and instead of filling either of them in on their plan, he instead dictates his next move to move their fleet away from Theramore, and that was it. As Baine and Vol'jin left the war tent, Garrosh and Melkorok laugh loudly. When the Horde begins its attack on Theramore, Baine and Vol'jin are chosen to be part of Garrosh's personal attack force on Theramore's north gate. During this battle, Baine becomes locked in combat with the Night Elf Pained, who was Jaina's personal bodyguard. While the two of them fought, Jaina tells Garrosh and Baine that Kalecgos the Blue Dragon is aiding Theramore, and he is trying to trap the Horde forces from retreating. This causes Garrosh to order a full retreat, but Baine decides to remain behind to ensure that more Horde soldiers are able to escape. Garrosh tells Baine that he wouldn't mount a rescue mission for him if he would be captured, so he should leave now before it's too late. Disarming Pained, Baine flees the battlefield and believes that the battle for Theramore was lost. He confronts Garrosh and tosses a bloody cloth in his face, saying that the blood of the slain Tauren in this battle was more fitting for him than his tattoos. Garrosh simply laughs and points upward to a zeppelin carrying the mana bomb, and then he reveals his plan to Baine at last. The attack was never to destroy Theramore. It was meant to weaken and force the Alliance to send all of its high-ranking leaders, such as Chandra's Feathermoon and General Marcus Jonathan, there, so the bomb could destroy everybody at once. Garrosh claimed this would weaken the Alliance, and moments later Theramore was blasted into nothingness. While many Horde cheered the destruction of Theramore, there were also those who were disgusted by the act, including Baine himself. He was shocked, and he wondered what happened to the same Garrosh that had punished Overlord Cromgar in the Stone Talon Mountains for using a goblin bomb to destroy a druid town, very similar to the manner in which Theramore was now destroyed. While Garrosh and many of the Horde celebrated the victory in Orgrimmar, Baine, Vol'jin, and the Blood Elf and Forsaken commanders gathered at Razor Hills Inn and discussed their thoughts about what Garrosh had done. Melkorok and some of the Kor'kron arrive and confront them for speaking against Garrosh's command, causing Baine and Vol'jin to leave. Shortly after, the inn explodes, killing both the Blood Elf and the Forsaken commanders. Melkorok and the Kor'kron claim it as an accident, but neither Vol'jin nor Baine really believe it. After Theramore's destruction, the Alliance attacks Orgrimmar in order to break the Horde's blockade of Kalimdor, pushing them back and destroying Garrosh's Kraken. Baine, Vol'jin, Garrosh, and Melkorok then learn that as the Alliance left Orgrimmar, they had retaken Northwatch Hold, and were en route to destroy the blockade themselves. Garrosh recalls the blockade, which pleases Baine, who had never thought Garrosh's blockade and the attack on Theramore were smart or moral acts to begin with, but then he realizes that Garrosh had not learned his lesson. He tells Baine and Vol'jin that instead of simply expelling the Alliance from Kalimdor, he is now going to wage a total war of genocide against the Alliance. Immediately, Baine calmly tells him that he and his Tauren are returning to Thunderbluff, and that should Garrosh wish the continued support of him and the Tauren, another Theramore must never happen. Garrosh responds that his declaration and his loyalty is duly noted with a smirk, and Baine leaves Orgrimmar. As he does, his eyes meet Vol'jin's, and the two exchange a sad glance. Returning to Mulgore, Baine couldn't help but wonder if Garrosh was mad with power, or simply mad. Slightly before the mist surrounding Pandaria had fallen, Baine had a dream of a valley golden with blossoms and filled with the hope of peace. As such, he ordered the Dawn Chaser tribe, commanded by Sunwalker Dezco, to sail towards the waters where Pandaria would be discovered, to search for it. Baine isn't seen again until the Landfall campaign, where he journeys to Pandaria to keep an eye on Garrosh. After Garrosh corrupts several orcs with the power of the Shah at their shrine in the Vale of the Eternal Blossoms, Baine orders General Nazgrim to send for loyal champions of the Horde to knock some sense into the Shah-infested orcs. After this, Baine sends a message to Vol'jin informing him of what Garrosh was doing. Soon rumblings of dissent begins to increase, and Baine decides to remain on Pandaria to make sure things don't get out of hand, and to protect his fellow Tauren. Baine remains confident that he can stay close to Garrosh safely, but Vol'jin isn't so sure. He remains worried and tells the champions of the Horde to keep an eye out for their High Chieftain. Later in the campaign, Baine and Garrosh travel to the Kunlai summit in search of a Mogu artifact. The Horde capture the Mogu warlord Shan Kien, and Garrosh nearly has his Blade Master Ishi execute him for refusing to tell them how to find the location of an artifact called the Divine Bell. Instead of this, Baine offers another solution, a Pandaren dream brew which they could look into Shan Kien's memories and find the location of the bell without assassinating the Mogu. The Horde champions learn the location of the bell and inform Baine, who tells them that the Horde will look for the cave holding the artifact, and when they find it, they will be called upon again. Baine is then absent again until the escalation event, but he is eventually told of Anduin being nearly crushed to death by Garrosh when he destroyed the Divine Bell. Having a past history with the prince, Baine was distressed to learn of Anduin's injuries. He then begins hearing of the Darkspear Rebellion, and decides to travel to Razor Hill and arrives just after the battle where the Darkspears had taken control of the village. It is at this time that Baine learns that Vol'jin had not died and actually survived Garrosh's assassination attempt on Pandaria. Baine assures his cooperation to the troll, however he tells Vol'jin that because many Tauren still remained in Orgrimmar, he needed to plan his moves carefully to prevent them from suffering from Garrosh's wrath. Finally, as the siege of Orgrimmar begins, Baine joins Vol'jin in Razor Hill with his Tauren in full force. He remarks that he should have killed Garrosh after the death of his father, and laments the fact that he hadn't done so. Vol'jin responds by saying that not everyone will survive the march on Orgrimmar, so they should prepare for the losses, but Garrosh will pay. Now let's move on to the personality traits of Baine. Baine is essentially the polar opposite of Garrosh. Baine is patient, calm, wise, and is willing to avoid battles if valid alternatives are available. This is exceedingly apparent when Baine has dealt with Garrosh in the past. Where Garrosh rapidly demands things and insults his people's ways, Baine responds with control and a patience that strikes a key difference between the two leaders. Despite sometimes wondering if he could become the great leader his father was, Baine believes deeply in the Tauren people. And following one incident where several Tauren discussed leaving Thunderbluff, but ultimately decided not to, Baine has essentially won the admiration of his people. He is not afraid to take charge of a situation and calmly tell people what he thinks, and he tries to lead his people in the Horde's dark times under Garrosh. As such, diplomacy is Baine's strong suit, and he is very willing to work with the Alliance to stem bloodshed. He actually is on a decent relationship with Anduin Wrynn, Prince of Stormwind. But that does not mean Baine is not afraid to get his hands dirty. He will fight if it is necessary, and he is a force to be reckoned with. Alright, let's move on to the opinion section. Essentially, for this opinion section, my only question is why Blizzard seems unwilling to use Baine to his full potential. Cairn's death still remains an extremely controversial move on the part of Blizzard, and many lore fans, myself included, had thought that the removal of the admittedly aging Cairn would pave way for Baine to have a much more center role in the Horde politics. However, he is still very underrepresented in the lore, and even more so in the game itself. Being the leader of the Torn, he is of course included whenever the leaders of the Horde are called, and he has verbally sparred with Garrosh on various occasions. But the storyline of Mists of Pandaria have almost entirely forsaken Baine in favor of Lor'themar and Vol'jin. But don't get me wrong, I do enjoy both of those characters, although Lor'themar much more than Vol'jin admittedly, but I still do both like them. However, the fact that Baine is such a polar opposite of Garrosh should have been the perfect opportunity to give him that spotlight, the one that many of us thought he would be receiving. Vol'jin is a fine character, but in a few ways he isn't too radically different from Garrosh himself. Vol'jin simply isn't the racist that Garrosh is, and does see a need for peace on occasion. But Baine represents a Thrall-esque attitude that the Horde is lacking. And while I am in no way advocating that Thrall has to be a major part of the story again, that doesn't mean the role that Thrall filled should also be gone. Baine almost automatically fits that role, if he is included. To me, Baine is that stoic badass that isn't afraid of battle, but sees the necessity and the value of diplomacy. With all of the Type A personalities currently battling it out amongst the Horde, Vol'jin, Lor'themar, Malkorok, Nazgrim, and Garrosh, I feel as if the story is actually worse off for not having a counterbalance character like Baine. I am not really sure why Blizzard decided to include Vol'jin's story much more prominently than Baine's. I do wonder if it's trying to fulfill Vol'jin's promise to kill Garrosh in the beginning of the Cataclysm. If this is truly the answer though, then I am not satisfied. Even though Garrosh did try to assassinate Vol'jin, Baine has had a much longer standing reason to hate the Warchief than virtually anybody else inside the Horde. It is certainly to his credit as a character that he simply isn't going around talking about constantly hating Garrosh, but that storyline of him getting vengeance for his father should not be left hanging. Baine deserves some absolution in the death of Cairn, and he also deserves some absolution in the death of Garrosh. And from what we can predict from the sound files being data mined thus far in the 5.4 PTR, Baine is nowhere to be found during the Garrosh part of the fight or the final section of the raid. Of course, the caveat is that he most likely will be featured in the post-death cinematic. However, I do have a feeling that Thrall and Vol'jin will largely be the focus of that cinematic instead of Baine. That's essentially it for Baine's video. I simply want him to be included more, and I'm not sure why they haven't. I'm a huge fan of the injection of character that Lor'themar received, and I simply wish for Baine to get that treatment as well. And so we come to another end of a video. That's it. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you believe I've forgotten something here or my premise is wrong at any point, feel free to leave it in a comment below and I most certainly will address it. If you liked this video and wanted to help me out, you could do so by liking, favoriting, commenting, and subscribing. However, if you truly wanted to help me out, you could do that by sharing my video with those people you might think find them interesting. I am always looking to introduce more people to the lore, so if you know anyone like that, please send them my way and I will be forever grateful. I love talking about the lore with you guys, and I love to share it with more people who might be interested in it, but did not realize there's such a community for lore-based fans. And finally, as always, if you have any suggestions for a character you'd like to see explored next, let me know, and I will do my best to accommodate it. Thanks again, everybody. My name is Necroxis, and I hope to see you for our next in-depth look at a Warcraft character and their lore, because there is always more Warcraft lore to explore, and I hope you do that with me. Farewell.